Well, it would seem that Variety magazine is now confirming from the Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm something that we have been saying was going to be the case now for quite some time. Some of it may seem obvious, maybe some not, depending if you've been watching this channel or not and how long you've been watching it for. But one thing's for sure at this point is that Patti Jenkins and Kevin Feige are out when it comes to Star Wars. And with all the restructuring and cost-cutting going on at the Walt Disney Company that we've been talking about for the last month, in excess of $5 billion since it was announced back during the early February earnings call. Well, it's no surprise at this point that
you're fired. Everybody's fucking fired.
How you feeling right now, Taika Watiti?
Renegade Online.
Well, welcome back. It's another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video that are not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit the like button, hit the notification bell, share this sucker out on your favorite social medias, and do leave a comment before you head out the door today. And by the way, make sure to check us out every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show right here on Valiant Renegade. Now on to today's news. We've got a new report from Variety magazine confirming what we've been talking about now for, since forever and a day ago. That the entire Star Wars slate of purported movies that were going to be put into production have all been for naught. And this began years ago following the 2019 mess that was The Rise of Skywalker, or as I call it more adequately, The Rise of Palpatine. Since that movie went into pre-production, really no other movie has legitimately made it into pre-production. There have been a lot of projects that have been put into development, namely in the case of this Variety article, such movies that would be helmed by one Kevin Feige of Marvel Studios, something that I'm sure at the time that Kathleen Kennedy was none too happy about. And of course, we talked about that when that news arose. And then there was another movie, trilogies of movies, in fact, from Rian Johnson, who was the architect of the disaster that was The Last Jedi for the fandom and basically broke the entire Star Wars commercially viable franchise. Now, since then, we've seen other movies announced, namely in terms of Patti Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, which went so far as to even get a bit of a trailer, a teaser, as it were, on YouTube with Patti Jenkins walking up to an X-Wing to pilot it. That movie has been shanked, and now Variety is confirming that as well. You always have to be a bit cautious with what you hear, that when you hear it, you actually examine what the source of the information is. Is it from an official Disney statement, or is it from some third-party source? Always bear that in mind. And today we have a very official source here from Variety magazine. Quote, Star Wars Shakeup. Kevin Feige and Patti Jenkins movies shelved. Taika Watiti looking to star in his own film. When Jon Favreau stepped onto the red carpet for the Season 3 premiere of The Mandalorian on February 28th, the Disney Plus show's creator and executive producer was feeling nostalgic. Quote, It's been a while since we've all been together here like this, Favreau told Variety, evoking the November 2019 premiere for the launch of the show and of Disney Plus itself. It was before the first episode aired, he said. At the time, The Mandalorian was a scrappy land speeder in a vast Star Wars galaxy nipping at the heels of The Rise of Skywalker, the culminating feature film from director J.J. Abrams that was expected just a month later to obliterate the box office like a cinematic Death Star. Instead, The Mandalorian became a global sensation thanks to the incandescent cuteness of Baby Yoda, blasting Disney Plus into light speed with 26.5 million subscribers in its first 6 weeks. The Rise of Skywalker, on the other hand, imploded in spectacular fashion. The film earned just half the grosses of 2015's The Force Awakens and the widespread scorn of fans, and Star Wars movie development has been stuck in the bogs of Dagobah ever since. Now, full stop right there. Once again, I want to remind folks that this is Variety magazine. This is the oldest Hollywood publication of record. This is, again, the most prestigious Hollywood publication, depending on who you talk to, of course, of record. And Variety magazine, who has long been very friendly to the Walt Disney Company. As a matter of fact, if Bob Iger walked down the street tomorrow after doing a full Dark Wizard build in Hogwarts Legacy and did this, then Variety magazine would come back the next day with an article telling you that Bob Iger was so magnanimous for helping to reduce the homeless population. And there you have it. What have we been telling you here on Valiant Renegade for over a year now, maybe even almost 2 years at this point? This is a complete and utter failure. This is a complete and utter mismanagement of Star Wars, as was previously cited in places like The Atlantic, their publication almost 2 years ago now. Star Wars is a train wreck for the Walt Disney Company. And even as if the movies were not enough, we've recently seen reports made by our friends like Drunk 3PO covering stories that the Galactic Star Cruiser is going to be reducing its bookings by nearly 50% come the fall of this year because it has no prospects of actually filling out the hotel with only 100 rooms for a full voyage. And one of the biggest black eyes that Robert Iger has to deal with since his return is fixing the mess that Kathleen Kennedy has made with one of the last big pieces of IP that he purchased before his departure. Yeah, I get the fact that he bought the Fox empire for $70 billion. And even Wall Street analysts to this day are still lamenting that to a degree, vastly overpaying for it. But in terms of an actual IP, there was Pixar, there was Marvel, and there was Lucasfilm. Pixar and Marvel have both turned hefty profits for the Walt Disney Company, not only at the theatrical level, but in third-party distribution and in merchandising. Lucasfilm has been the lone sole black eye for Robert Iger's legacy. And this is something that he's probably none too pleased with. And this is why that we continue to suggest that Robert Iger and Kathleen Kennedy have almost assuredly had a big falling out since all of this began. Because at the end of the day, regardless of whether you think Bob Iger is a big wokey or not, doesn't matter. For a man like Robert Iger in a position that he's in, a man of stature and wealth in the Hollywood community, his legacy is of paramount importance. But it's not for want of trying. In December of 2020, Lucasfilm chief Kathleen Kennedy announced that Wonder Woman helmer Patti Jenkins would direct the next Star Wars movie, the one-off adventure Rogue Squadron. But in September of 22, Disney pulled the title from its scheduled December 23 release, and sources with knowledge of the production say that it is no longer in active development at the studio. A rep for Lucasfilm did not respond to a request for comment. In December, Jenkins said in a statement that she was still developing Rogue Squadron, but, quote, "I don't know if it will happen or not." Patti, honey, it's not happening. You were a miserable failure as a writer-director combo for Wonder Woman 1984, and that's why your star has fallen in Hollywood. Frankly, that's probably also why you were fired from the project known as Cleopatra, which was being executive produced and helmed by your supposed friend, Gal Gadot. Meanwhile, Variety has learned that a possible Star Wars feature produced by Marvel Studios chief Kevin Feige is also no longer in active development at Lucasfilm. Thanks for that one, Captain Marvel. Captain Obvious. Yeah, of course, Kevin Feige is no longer involved in a Star Wars project. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has taken a hot dump all over American and global audiences since Endgame in 2019. Phase 4 has been an absolute epic financial disaster for the Walt Disney Company and for Marvel Studios, and Phase 5 already got out of the gate with a complete whimper and a fart when it came to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We have covered the financial and economic doldrums of the MCU on this channel repeatedly, and nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, looks like it's going to change that outlook anytime soon. Even with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, the last hurrah from James Gunn before he exited to go helm the DC universe at Warner Brothers Studios. And I'm not so sure about Guardians 3 anymore, especially after the complete failure of Ant-Man 3, which is now being openly and publicly lamented by several Hollywood trades, even on Wall Street publications at this point. Sure, the movie might be great, but how much of the audience is going to be soured because of its predecessor at this point? Is this movie, Guardians 3, actually going to hit $1 billion mark? Something that no Disney Marvel movie has done since Endgame. Spider-Man No Way Home, yeah, that's an exception, but that was Sony. Sony is in full command of that character, not Disney. The Walt Disney Company and Marvel Studios at this point ought to be down on their knees thanking their lucky stars that Sony decided to get in bed with them to get Spider-Man back into the MCU, because that is the only thing they have going for them at this point. Here's the skinny, folks. At this point, to see this kind of language written in a Variety magazine article is something that is frankly stunning. This is Hollywood elite butt-kissing publication, Variety. This is not a magazine you would expect to use such, frankly, in context, harsh language as they have, effectively calling the entirety of Star Wars to this point, at least in the last 6 years or so, a complete and utter boondoggle, a failure, looking for change at this point. This is really amazing. It's one thing to hear this kind of information from your average YouTuber like this guy, or even from some other publications out there. But you've got Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter and now Variety magazine, all within the span of the last 12 to 24 months, that have really come in and basically taken Star Wars to the woodshed at this point. You have to start asking yourself at this point, what else does Variety know that they're not divulging? You see, when you can't have a major motion picture studio get anything of serious financial value into production in over 5 or 6 years at this point, that should tell you something. That should tell you the leadership there is an abysmal failure. And as we've stated here many times on Valiant Renegade, Kathleen Kennedy, in the absence of far better Hollywood talents, men like Steven Spielberg, men like Richard Donner, men like George Lucas, she's not capable of producing anything of any really qualitative or quantitative value. The Force Awakens was something that Bob Iger himself said that he took the reins on. Make Star Wars A New Hope again. Fine, put a girl in it. Do whatever you want, but give the audience something they're familiar with and set up the future. He then turned those reins over to Kathleen Kennedy, who then turned the reins over to Rian Johnson. And we all know how that went. It seems like we're at the point now where the rumors from WDW Pro and that Park Place from now a year and a half ago are starting to come to fruition. And that means that Kathleen Kennedy will be retiring sometime shortly after Indiana Jones 5. I think it makes a lot of sense. That was always her baby. And by the time this movie comes out, she will be over 70 years old. And let's face it, at this point, she's done very little herself in terms of Lucasfilm or for the Walt Disney Company for that matter. It's time to move on. It's time to let other more talented people take the reins and try to salvage the $4 billion investment that was made by Bob Iger himself back in 2012. And maybe that will indeed come in the form of Jon Favreau and Gollum Creations, his production company, which we've heard rumors of now for the last few weeks that will be taking more of a leadership role in producing Star Wars content for Disney as a third-party contractor. He's been doing Mandalorian up to this point, and there's no reason not to have him helm major cinematic projects going forward. He's made a ton of money for the Walt Disney Company over the last decade. Just ask Bob Iger. That's why he trusts him probably more than anybody else on the creative side of things in that company right now. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, join us on the Sunday live stream at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on Valiant Renegade. We look forward to seeing you there. And until then, take care.